One of the greatest acting teachers I believe I ever worked with was a mask teacher. He was an old man with an English accent and gleaming childlike eyes. His name was Pierre Lefay, and he was one of the original faculty members at the Juilliard School. In mask class, where Pierre would hold court, there was this long line of masks in front of all of us, and there's this huge mirror, this mirror in this giant white room, and Pierre reminded me of the character Clarence the Angel from the movie It's a Wonderful Life, until he would slip on a mask and he would become Clarence the Hell's Angel. It was, what is this? Let's try this on. Yes. Who am I? A wizard? A madman? Oh, possibly I'm not even human. Yes, I want to justify the character's soul. I want to fill in the life of the mask. I want to become it. Yes. So let's see what this mask is. Oh yes, look, this is a bit tragic. I ask myself, where have I lost something, profoundly in my life? And his jowls a bit heavy, and everything is sort of heavy and low to the ground. See if we can find the voice for this character. Yes. Oh, love. I've been wandering the streets since 19-something. Where is my lost love? How do I find her again? Oh, look, a flower. Oh. Yes, so I can sort of carry this tragic state with me. So where am I in this mask? Oh, now look at this. Now, this one is a bit quite frightening, really. It's sort of like on the precipice between bashing your brains and maybe, giving you a hug. So, let's see if we can find the voice for this particular character. It sort of seems like his voice would be sort of in the upper registers, Let's give him a voice. It kind of reminds me of like a New York cab driver. Welcome to the big freaking apple. Okay, so everybody go on, come on, let's grab a mask, chop, chop, let's do it. And all these characters that he would just spontaneously erupt into, he would always ask the central question, where am I in this mask? Where am I in this mask? And he taught me that even though it was incredibly fun and quite liberating to wear these masks, and even though the masks were scary and beautiful and horrifying and twisted and misshapen and all these different things that you can sort of get lost into, that the real focus was the role hiding underneath the mask. That was the role you needed to tap into. In order to fill in the life of the mask, you needed to focus on this hidden role first and foremost. Where are you in this mask? It's a very powerful question. One that goes, I believe, way beyond the world of the theater. Are you just making noise? Or is this scene coming from an honest place in your life? Otherwise, you were just wearing a mask. And Pierre helped you, guide you back to your center, back to the core of your being, and ask, where are you? It was easy wearing the mask, relatively. But the challenge was fighting the role, hiding underneath it. But when you gained access to that hidden role, that's where the magic began. And this is where the greater story in all of us begins. So what is the greater story? Well, in the business world, there are many examples of the greater story. You got Tony Hsieh with Zappos, delivering happiness. And you've got Kim Jordan with New Belgium, transforming a beer brewery into a company that delivers huge results in the lives of its employees, its community, and its planet. You've got the Unreasonable Institute supporting global nonprofits to change the planet. The greater story can be found everywhere. In the legal profession, where I do a lot of work as a trial lawyer consultant and as a communications coach, I found the greater story recently in the life and in the voice of a badly injured early childhood development teacher who needed to see the courtroom as the classroom where she thrived in front of the eyes of the jurors. And in order to tell her story right, she needed to find the strength within to become the star teacher that everybody who worked with her, including former students in a career of over 25 years, said that she was. And from her broken and her emotional state, I watched her rise above the pain that had taken over her entire body and become the teacher that she was born to be. She became her greater story. The greater story is hidden inside all of us, and it's our job to awaken it and to live it. But what is it that gets in the way of living our greater story? In high school, I had a great friend growing up in LA named Charlie. And Charlie was a brilliant composer. He was also incredibly eccentric, and he was wild, and he would wear all these colorful costumes that reflected the manic fervor of his music. And when he would laugh, his entire body would accompany the laugh. I mean, literally leap across the room like some slingshot, ordering something as mundane and simple as a pizza, and he'd give this little crazy dance. He was wild. I loved him. And Charlie was already a very accomplished composer at his age, but there was a dark shadow hanging over Charlie's life. And I believe that shadow was comprised of a lot of people's ideas about who and what they thought that he should be or was supposed to be in this life. And that shadow was comprised of expectation. Outside my bedroom was a hallway full of hats. And one day I gave Charlie a cool Rasta cap with swirling colors. And after that, pretty much every time I saw him, he wore it. That hat became a part of his beautifully demented persona. He said it was like, it's like wearing my childhood. And in hindsight, I realized how absolutely terrified of the real world he really was. But of course we all were. And we were a part of a band of brothers, two other guys that I'm going to refer to as the painter and the novelist. And we all went to LACHSA, which is LA County High School for the Arts. And there were two worlds that we were caught in between. One world was innocent and safe, like some kind of warm couch. And the other was inviting yet foreboding. In my bedroom were all the faces of everybody that I desperately wanted to become. Not just be like, but I wanted to be them. Why? God, why couldn't I be like them? Rock stars, movie stars, visionaries who lived dangerously, everybody that I needed to become. And at night I would look out towards a city where the lights faded out. That's where the bridge was. And every Friday night we would climb the bridge. Now in reality, the bridge was an old abandoned reservoir, and there was this enormous ladder going up to the side. And the ritual was that once you reached the other side, you would become something different. Anybody but you. It was a ridiculous, childish notion, but we believed it, obviously enough to go there every Friday night. And I remember spreading out like troops in combat, standing at the base of the enormous height of the bridge, reach out into the darkness. Every time was the first time. Grab hold of that first wet, rusty, spiky ledge of ladder. Take that first step into your dreams of invincibility, and once on top of the other side, if you have the courage to climb all the way up and keep going, there awaited your superhero costume for the future. Tonight, more than any other night when we've climbed the bridge, we need to know that all our promises from youth were not a lie. I go first. The novelist waits while I mount 5 rungs and follows, and then the painter, and then the composer. 10 minutes pass. Ooh, man, it's scary up here. 15, 20, 25 minutes of climbing. We aren't even halfway up yet. Two weeks later, I found out that the composer, my great friend, Charlie, he took his own life. This happened far outside of LA. I was going to New York. I'd been accepted into the Juilliard School. But another spell had been cast, and nothing would ever be the same again. Last year, I attended the funeral service for a boy on my stepdaughter's swim team who took his own life, a boy I never knew. And sitting there, looking at his framed face, smiling at the crowd of people who attended the service, I couldn't help but wonder, what was it that made him choose this path? Or made him feel like he didn't even have a choice at all? And whatever it was, he had to believe an idea that was so profoundly negative about himself, an idea that perhaps was based upon the ideas of what a lot of other people thought about who he was and how he should be living his life. And I thought, what if he were to believe something different about himself? What if what he believed was the complete opposite of the darkness? I couldn't help but think of Charlie. And not too much time had passed that I got a request to return to Loxa to teach a math class to the graduating theater class, going off to college to enter the next stage, so to speak, of their lives. And it didn't seem like that long that I'd been back here. You know, my hair was a little longer at the time, and I wore my pants up to here like most kids in high school, or at least in the 90s, early 90s. But here I was again, and I shared with them the story of my great friend Charlie in the best way that I knew how to, through the theater. And instead of talking about Charlie, I became him, but not just Charlie. I became the novelist, and I became the painter who had a giant afro, and I brought back the bridge. And I shared with them my experience of not having to define yourself by the world's standards. That when you're connected to something greater than yourself, you're acting out with an even greater power, purpose, and passion, more than you ever even dreamed of. That this is our true role, not just as artists, but as human beings on this planet. What could be better than that role? But how do you find it? How do you find that role? Well, what if we were to remove the mask and see ourselves, our true character, from a greater vantage point, a greater perspective? What would we discover? At our core, we are filled with more potential than we would have ever even dreamed of. One of the defining characteristics of this hidden role is kindness. But not the kind of woo-woo kindness you may be thinking of. One of the greatest tenets of the theater is kindness. But I actually prefer the word generosity. It's action-based. And some of the greatest actors and directors I ever worked with were generous. Didn't necessarily make them likable, but they were generous. Big difference, because when you're acting out of generosity, you're giving not just to your scene partner, but your entire audience, everything you've got. Because, and here's the paradox, you're stepping out of your own way. Your performance will be infinitely more powerful for whatever audience that happens to be when you stop thinking, what do I look like, sound like, move like, how will I be perceived? Stop listening to your own thinking and listen to the other actor. Make the entire scene about them. Be surprised by her. Be intrigued by her. Make him look amazing. And what ends up happening? Well, first off, you end up working better and more harmoniously together. You start to have a greater connection. You get lost in the moment. Something changes in your energy, and your connection towards the other person grows deeper in the complete abandon of self to the moment. And also, paradoxically, you end up looking pretty good. Well, a whole lot better anyway. So when you take the pressure off yourself and act in this state of generosity, you get out of your head and into your body and your five senses. Your reactions become more spontaneous and real. You stop trying to force the scene and you allow it to unfold naturally. And you start listening with way more than just your ears. You listen with your entire being. You hear the music, as a great teacher of mine once said, you hear the music or you hear the notes beyond the music. All of us get to be great scene partners. This is the role you need to be playing before you ever even enter the stage. When you gain access to this hidden role, success will have met you before you even utter your first lines. In order to hold on to this role, in order to allow it to become our greater story, you got to find it in other people. You've got to know that deep down, everyone, and I don't care who you are, where you come from, everyone has been given this greater role, this hidden role. But they too can have confused the role with the mask that they're wearing. And it is your job to help them remove that mask in whatever way you can. And when you do that, your greater story will flourish. This, I've come to believe, is true service. Helping people discover their greater role and their greater story without a price tag. And I can't help but think if only Charlie would have learned this lesson. I believe his musical voice could have kept growing. What if he were to find another Charlie out there? Who knows what he could have become? And I think in this giant mask class, there are many masks. Some are beautiful, some are terrifying, some are misshapen, some are childlike. And here comes the greatest paradox of them all. Wear every single one of them. Don't run away from them. Use them, because each of them adds to the divine music of your being. But don't ever confuse the mask for the role you were truly meant to play. I love the poet Rumi. He says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, a momentary awakening comes as an unexpected visitor. Greet them at the door and welcome all of them in. Treat each guest honorably. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, greet them at the door laughing and entertain them all. Be grateful for whoever shows up, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." Every mask we wear is a guide from beyond to remind us of what our greater story can become, as long as we remember what our greater role is on this stage. And in the words of another great poet, William Shakespeare, who said, and you know this, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man or woman in his time plays many parts." So, everybody get up, grab a mask, let's go, chop, chop, let's do it. All right, everyone stand in front of the mirror. Now put the mask on, breathe into it, trust the words that come, find the movement. Where are you in this mask? Now, play. Discover. The scene is yours. Thank you. Thank you very much.